I'm Mario Martinez Jr., CEO and founder of Vengreso, and we are the creators of flymessage.io, the free personal writing assistant and text expander application. On each episode of this podcast, you will hear from sales leaders, practitioners, and influencers to help you grow your sales numbers at scale. So, get your pen and paper or iPad and keyboard and start taking notes as you're now listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Modern Selling Podcast. And hey, I'm recording this now in summertime. I've got my Aloha shirt on. You better believe it. I'm enjoying the beautiful sunny weather because today I'm even more excited than sunny weather to have my friend, Mr. Mike Esterday. He is the CEO of Integrity Solutions and co-author of the book, Listen to Sell. You're going to love the content that we're going to talk about here today. Mike, welcome to the show, my friend.
It's great to be with you.
I'm excited that you're here with me. Do me a favor for all of our audience. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Integrity Solutions, and then I want to ask you a very special question that I always ask all my listeners. So a little bit about yourself and about Integrity Solutions, please.
Well, I grew up on a farm in Illinois and got started selling books door to door my college summers. So I did that on straight commission. So I've been selling for a long time. Been involved with Integrity Solutions for several decades. And we just love working with companies all around the world, over 130 countries, to help improve sales and sales coaching skills.
Excellent. And your background, you've been doing this now, 12 years, 13 years?
A little more than that, but been with Integrity for almost 35 years.
Oh, I didn't realize. Wow. Okay. So I was a little off on that one. I didn't realize Integrity's been around for that length of period of time.
Yeah, actually started by Ron Willingham down in Texas in 1968. So we've been doing this for a long time, and he was at the forefront of customer needs-focused selling in the early 80s, back when there was a lot more manipulation and those types of things. He said, hey, we need to have a more customer-focused process of selling skills.
Gotcha. So really the target of Integrity Solutions is B2B sales companies or B2C to enhance sales skills, or tell us exactly.
Could be either way. Work with companies that do both. All kinds of industries, all kinds of 12 different languages around the world. So anybody that's interacting with us on the phone, person to person, one-time close, 2-year type of close, whatever it is, big sale, small ticket, these principles are people principles that work regardless of the industry, regardless of the country.
Gotcha. Okay, well, good. And co-author, congratulations. Listen to Sell, right? You even got the book right there behind you.
Got to do some promotion.
That's right. So when was it released?
February, early February. I've been working on it for about 3 years. So we've been trying to pick up what are the key things we've learned around the world, from our clients and to help salespeople today deal with the various changes that are happening in the marketplace to improve their success level.
Excellent. And I always ask this question of all my guests, and that is, tell us something, Mike, nobody knows about you, even if they're looking at any or all of your social profiles.
One thing they'd probably not know is that I actually got arrested once for selling. When I was about 18 years old, selling books door to door in Texas, I got picked up for selling children's books without a permit. So I got to spend a little time in jail for my sales career. Got out pretty quickly, but most people don't know that.
Oh, no. And you still wanted to stay inside of sales?
That's it.
Wow. That's a first. I don't think I've heard anybody ever say on our show. This is like 7 years. They got arrested for selling. All right. You win that one. And I'm surprised that you wanted to stay in sales. I guess that can either deter you or it can motivate you, yeah?
It certainly could. Well, I had a goal to hit that week, so I still hit it. And I thought, okay, I can get through any kind of a problem if I can do that.
It's all about the quota, hitting the quota.
That's it.
I love it. Very good. Well, let's talk a little bit about sales, the role of salespeople, and some good content here related to Listen to Sell. Now, you and I were talking a little bit in the background around your view of the role and importance of salespeople today. First off, talk a little bit about that. And then there's a big growing concern that salespeople are kind of fading into the background of value and relevance in the buying process because of so much data that's available to individuals today, and plus AI and all this stuff. So how do you view the role, the role and importance of salespeople today? And do you feel like that they're fading into the background in terms of value and relevance in the buying process?
Well, there is a lot of concern, with chat boxes and AI and so forth. Do we need salespeople in the future? They talk about industries that are going away. And some people say salespeople aren't needed. I think, and we think, that this is one of the best times to be in sales because people can Google a question, but they may get 10,000 solutions. So how do I figure out what's best for me or my company without a professional person who really understands the situation, can ask the right questions, and make good recommendations? Now, if it's just something you're going to order online that you can click and do it, that may be okay. But for true professional selling, higher level skills are important today. They're critical.
Gotcha. So you don't think then salespeople are fading off in terms of value and relevance, or is it what you bring to the table in terms of what you bring as value and how you make yourself relevant in the buying process?
Absolutely. I think they're critical. At the same time, you've got to have elevated skills today to interact with customers because they typically know more about you and your products or solution you're selling than they did in the past. So you've been doing research on your customers and they're doing research on you. So you need to really understand, how do you ask the right questions? How do I interact with them properly? And how can I make the recommendations that are the right thing and the right match for that customer?
And I think a lot of sellers today are challenged by the fact that they aren't asking the right questions to understand the true pain or problem, and then looking to solve that pain or problem through the technology or solution or service or portfolio, whatever it might be. And oftentimes we hear an ancillary thing that our product or solution does, and we try to bite onto that and sell to that ancillary thing, as opposed to what business problem do we truly solve? And do they have that problem? Have they identified? Yes, first step in the process. Yes, I have a problem. Has the buyer identified that? And I think a lot of sellers are missing out in that regard to make themselves more relevant in the buying process.
Absolutely. It's so easy to walk in being a product-focused salesperson. This is what I have to hit. This is the quota I've got to hit. So I'm thinking about me, me, me. If I can flip that around and truly be sincerely interested in what the customer situation is, ask the question to figure out what's the real deal, have the ability to establish rapport so they're willing to tell you the truth, not just trying to get rid of you, then you can really get to the heart of the situation and make the right recommendation. They have a better chance of trusting you, and your sales will go up.
It's interesting, when I was going to college back in 95, is when I was there. Yes, I know people listening in. Yes, I'm approaching the 50 soon, right? But that having been said, a lot of individuals, when I said, "Hey, I'm actually finding a sales intern, an internship," people were like, "Oh, you're going into sales?" And it was like this stereotype that I think still exists today. When people say, "What are you going to be when you're going to college?" "Oh, I'm studying to be, lawyer, doctor, computer science, whatever." People are like, "Oh, that's really cool." But if someone said, "Oh, to go into professional selling," it's kind of an interesting negative stereotype and some baggage that is carried around with that. How do we as sales professionals address that head on?
But you can hardly blame people for having a poor view of selling, Mario, because what do you see on TV or movies? Well, we don't see anything positive typically. It's a shyster. It's a person that you don't want to have a conversation with. And so most people, they get these calls, even though we're not supposed to get these calls so much anymore. You get these calls and spam type of things. So when you think about selling, we define selling as identifying needs, filling needs, and creating value for people. When we help people shift their mindset of what selling really is. True professional selling is being a problem solver, helping people. When they realize that's what it is, often that helps them see, I can do that. That's consistent with my values. I can feel proud doing that. Instead of being embarrassed and calling myself something else other than a salesperson when I introduce myself at a party.
Yeah, fair enough. Agree with that. Now, one of the things that you did in the book, Listen to Sell, is you wrote Listen to Sell around 3 conversations that you believe every salesperson needs to be having. First, tell us a little bit about what are those 3 conversations and why did you write the book that way?
If you think about most sales training, it's typically around skills. And that's really important. We've got to have the skills of having a conversation with the customer. And that's a bottom line foundational piece. How to ask the questions, how to establish rapport, how to present your value proposition, work through objections, ask for the business, and so forth. But there's a second conversation that people have all day long, probably many more times a day than they do with customers. That's the conversation they have with themselves. And what is being said to yourself about who I can call on, how successful I can be, whether I can hit that quota or not, whether I can be a top salesperson. All that stuff really impacts how successful we can be. We often say that selling begins between the ears before it begins between people. The level of achievement drive that I have, my sense of purpose, all those things are wrapped up in that first conversation. So the conversation with the customer, conversation I have with myself, and the third one is the conversation I have with my manager or my coach or my mentor. What kind of advice am I getting? Am I listening to that advice? Am I trying to get better? The coach is helping me figure out how do I serve more customers and be more successful. So we wrote the book around those 3 key areas. And in the book, we have tips and specific ways people can shift their mindset to be more successful, ways they can establish rapport and have the right skills for success. And number 3 is coaching. Each chapter has coaching corners so they can ask themselves as a self-coach, or managers can use that to help people improve each of those conversations. So we found it to be a very practical way to think through of those 3 areas that can be really impactful. Too often, when a manager looks at someone and says, why aren't you producing? They want to talk about just the skill, and that might be the issue. But it may be the sense of purpose. It may be something else that's going on in their head that they need to shift first.
I love what you said about that. You said the conversation with the customer, conversation with myself, and the conversation with my coach or mentor. I don't know if you saw the recent post that I just did today, as a matter of fact. And my oldest, who is in 8th grade, just graduated, now going to high school, he was awarded the Black Excellence Award. My wife is half Black, half Korean, for the school district for academics, because he achieved a straight 4.0 throughout middle school, which is a really huge, big deal. And it was interesting because about 6, maybe 7 months ago, he came to me and we were having a conversation and he told me that he had a B. And I said, oh, bro, like, we don't do Bs. And so he broke down. He was so upset. He felt like I was putting too much pressure on him. And he said, all my friends at school say that your parents' expectations to get A's is unrealistic, and that's not something that can be achieved. And so I said, well, do you feel that way? And he said, well, yes, I do. I feel it's unrealistic. It's, to expect that. I said, okay. So what I did was I listened, and the next day I talked to him about it. Good old fashioned, like, absorb, and then let's talk about it later once you get out of your emotional state. And so the next day I said, son, I was really thinking about what you said. And I said, what is it that we expect of you? He was like, well, I have to get all A's. I'm like, what do we expect of you at home? Let's talk about that. What are the other expectations? Well, I got to pick up dog poop. I got to, wash the dishes. All right. Some basic things, right? Just basic, being part of a family. And so I said to him, I said, I think I've been very clear. I don't care if you don't bring home an A, as long as you put your best effort into it. Now, what is best effort? You're doing your homework. You're studying for your tests. You're asking for help and using resources like mom and myself. And I said, but here's the reality. You never bring home homework. Never. You never study for a test. And you never ask mom and dad for help. So one of two things is happening. Either you are a brilliant individual, or you've got 7 teachers who are the worst teachers in all the world. So I'm going to err on the side of that I'm pretty sure that you're a brilliant kid. So having this expectation is essentially you're proving that you can do this without having to study for tests, having to do homework, those types of things. So my expectation is, yes, you bring home A's exclusively, unless I see you putting in the time, the effort, the homework, and you tried and you don't produce it. Well, that conversation obviously was taken to heart, and he continued on his path. And so just today, I published a post on LinkedIn talking about straight A's, entire middle school, 4.0 GPA. That's what he achieved. And inside there, I wrote that the lesson that I hope that he learned and what we had talked about is number one, you got to push hard and create and go after a stretch goal. Number 2, you have to have drive to goal-oriented outcomes. Number 3, you have to visualize the goal and you walking through that goal. And do not listen to the voices around you that say you can't, won't, shouldn't, or couldn't. And then have an accountability partner that tells you what you want, what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Those are the 5 things that I told him, that's what I'm going to do for you. And essentially, this conversation of to myself is, I think, talking about some of those things. Would you agree when you talk about that third conversation?
What a great example. Most people tend to plateau. They listen to others around them. And some plateau at a low level, some plateau at a higher level. But the goal is, how do I break out of that paradigm? We all have a mental paradigm of what we think we can or can't do. So the key for a coach is, or for self-coaches, how do I step out of that comfort zone? Test myself, listen to others, study, talk to a mentor, because most all of us have the capability of accomplishing more than we are today. Whether it's for a goal, something we want to achieve, whether it's recognition or money or whatever it might be, we deserve to achieve more of our full potential.
I love what you just said, because maybe it was today. So I guess it was Monday, a few days ago. My son, we were at dinner. We have a rule that we don't use any phones at dinner time as a family. We eat dinner every night as a family, almost every night, 95% of the time. And he said, I need to check my phone because I'm waiting for the final grade. He had one grade left that he was waiting for. And he's like, I got to check it, Dad. I was like, okay, that's fine. Go ahead. So he picks up his phone and he goes, and I was like, what happened? And he was like, that's what I was worried as well. And I go, what happened? And he goes, I got a 200 out of 200 on the final exam for English. And he goes, I did it, Dad, I did it. And so back to your point there about, really taking the time and driving to an outcome and success, and having that conversation is super important.
It is so important to have those kind of successes in life and to have someone who sees more in you than you see in yourself. That's the real key of a coach. And because too often we get bogged down with that negative talk of, I can't do it, or these people aren't ready to buy, or I can't call on those folks, or I've never done it before. I've been average in sports, and, my last 2 jobs, I'll be average here. That little talk in our head is so critical, positive or negative. So it's important, we talk about listen to sell. It's important what you listen to and things that you don't listen to, and to get rid of that negative. We talk in that first section about 5 different dimensions of that mindset. And one is your view of selling. Do I think it's taking advantage of people? Do I think it's a noble profession? What do I think it is? Number 2, what's my view of my abilities? Do I think I can really succeed at this job? Or do I think I'm just going to be average? In the center of these 5 is the values. Am I doing the right thing? Integrity, following up with people. The fourth one is commitment to activities. Do I clearly understand what it takes to be successful at this job? But even more importantly, am I willing to do all of those things? The tough stuff, not just the things that are pleasurable, but the things that I need to do to be successful. And number 5 is my belief in product. And belief in product is not just believing you have a good product, but it's a sense of passion for the company and for me, because there are times that there may be product parity. There may be someone else that's actually leapfrogging us with a product. But the whole package, and I can be the difference. I can be the difference of what I bring to that relationship that creates more value. When people get these 5 dimensions into alignment, achievement drive is released. If I believe that selling is a noble profession, it's creating value for people, I believe I can do that. It's consistent with my values. I'm going to do whatever it takes to be successful because people need to have what I'm selling. That is really a key, even much more than just the skills.
Now, you've mentioned this concept of listening quite a bit, and it's obviously a common thread throughout the book, thus Listen to Sell, right? It is an underdeveloped skill in many salespeople. For those of you, you can't see the video if you're listening to audio. When I'm talking, Mike is totally engaged in this conversation. Like, there are very few people that I've ever seen that are like looking straight at the Zoom camera and that you can feel like he's an active listener, because that skill is very much underdeveloped. We're constantly, have ADD, our eyes are moving around, and we're thinking, what am I going to say next? So how do you approach the importance of active listening, developing both the capability and the mindset around why listening is so important?
Well, listening is a skill, but it's also a mindset. Do I truly, sincerely want to understand that person's view? I may not agree with it, but do I truly, sincerely want to understand it? When people pick that up, they tend to be more open to you. I grew up on a farm, and my dad always said, you be careful when you get in that pig pen, because those pigs, those animals kind of sense if you're there to hurt them or what you're going to do. And I think animals are that sensitive. People are that sensitive. They've got an antenna up. Say, is this person here to just sell me stuff, or is this person here to help me in some way? If the vibes you send off set the foundation for that conversation. So it is a skill and it is a mindset. Now, I can't say, you talked about me having, being focused on you. I work hard to do that, but none of us are certainly perfect, especially when I hear my wife say, you're not listening to me. You didn't hear what I said. So sometimes it's a little embarrassing to have a book saying, listen to sell when my wife says that, but it's true, but we all need to figure out how do we get better at tuning people in and tuning the world out.
Amen to that. I think this is a systemic problem amongst us anyways. I get in trouble all the time for that. So thinking about this concept of listening well, how does listening well relate to preparation for the customer conversation or customer conversations?
Well, listening can be verbal, but it can also be listening in your research. If you have an opportunity to do pre-call planning, what am I listening to the person who referred this potential customer? What's their behavior style? What can I pick up about how they want to communicate? Are they a bottom line, come on, get to the point person? Do they want facts and figures and details? What can I listen for in their tone of voice, in the kind of questions they ask back to me, their body language? So it's listening not just verbally, but it's visually, and also listening for things that I find out on the internet, perhaps, about that person that'll help me engage them. I'm looking for something that can make a personal connection and a professional connection. What is it, something that will make us connect, that they will listen to me as I come across with a proposition that's going to help them?
Got it. So if so much of our sales success is based on things like mindset, motivation, confidence, belief in the products and the companies that they're representing, why does so much of the sales training that we see today still revert to focusing on product information, how to, where to, tricks of selling? Where's the breakdown? Where's the gap at?
Well, number one, it's easier to talk about facts and figures and product features and benefits and so forth versus digging down into these other issues. We've done some global studies asking sales leaders, if you think about two big buckets of information, one is product knowledge and selling skills. The other is purpose, values, achievement drive. Which one is more important with your top salespeople? And consistently, they've said about 70, 80, 90% of the people say it's the second one, that achievement drive and those things are more important. Now, you've got to have the product knowledge. You've got to have the skills. But I've seen a lot of people with those that still fail because they can't get through the ups and downs of selling. So number one is it's easier to talk about those facts and figures. And number two, a lot of times the managers don't know how to do it, and training people don't know how to deal with that. You don't change people's mindset by just telling them to change their mindset. That just doesn't work. Get a good attitude, So it's something that needs to be coached, and it takes time. So in the training that we do, in Listen to Sell and in our programs, integrity selling, integrity coaching, and so forth, there's an initial workshop, but then there's an 8-week structured follow-up where people practice the ideas, get back together in small groups, share what's working, what are best practices. It has time-lapse, repetition, coaching, just like anything. If you're going to go play tennis, you'd play golf, play the piano, dance lessons, whatever it is, we don't just get it by watching a video or going to a workshop. We got to practice it. So that's the same thing here. And as I mentioned before, we have this mental paradigm, and it's not going to change without stepping out of it. So when you put a group together and say, hey, this week we're going to work on this, and they step out, they have a success, it expands your paradigm. People feel more confident. So I can do that again. So as we get successes, or if we have failures and people help us through that, it expands our mindset. Hey, I can do this. I can call on these people. I can sell this product. I can make more commission. So it's a combination of intellectually talking about it, but more importantly, it's an experiential change that shifts mindset.
One of the things you mentioned earlier was, how do I view my abilities, my commitment to the activities to achieve the success, and am I willing to do the tough stuff? Those three things, if we think about the number of salespeople that are not achieving quota, right? The number that I last saw was almost near 70%. Right? That's really, really, really bad, right? And I've always had a thing, and that was throughout my entire career, I always worked for the underdog, the second, third, or fourth place provider in the particular segment. Always was a top performer, because I looked at it as a challenge. If I could sell at the number 2, at the number 3, at the number 4, if I could sell and win, that makes me that much more of a better salesperson in terms of enhancing and developing my skills. Oftentimes, it's easy to be able to work out the number 1, because the number 1, they've got the market share, they've got the product, they've got the dollars, they've got and you fill in the blank. And it kind of reminds me back to the story I was talking about with my son, and this thinking of I can't achieve. And this is what I talked to my son about. And I said, you came into thinking about your grades as something that it wasn't achievable, something that you couldn't achieve. When in reality, once you develop the mindset that you had the ability without effort that you could achieve this goal, now it became something that you began chasing after. And that really drives back to a lot of that negative self-talk for an individual in sales, and for looking at, 1, you deserve to have success, 2, you can have success, 3, you are able to achieve success, and 4, what do I got to do to be able to break down the doors of success, right? And I think that's a real tough situation in terms of this conversation, right? The mindset, the motivation, the confidence. the beliefs in product or company, those things have got to be there, in my opinion. Otherwise, go find a company that you can believe those things in, right? But don't forget, your limiting factor, I believe, Mike, is still yourself.
Well, in the midst of AI and all this technology today, which we love, we've got a huge tech stack that we use, and it's very, very helpful. It helps us get to more conversations and so forth. I believe that you, me, the salesperson, is still the most important algorithm. It's the salesperson that makes a difference. That regardless of the situation, the challenge, the interest rates, the economy, what's going on, that I can make a difference. And it's that mindset that really is the key. And it takes a sense of commitment that I'm going to, fight through this. And I'm going to deal with the ups and downs of my mental situation, and have a coach that's going to help me do that. If my manager is not helping me do that, go listen to podcasts, read some books, find a peer that you can work with. Go follow somebody who's doing better than you are. Listen in on their calls, whatever it might be. But to challenge yourself to improve the skills and the mindset.
Back to what I said in my LinkedIn post earlier is, don't listen to the voices around you that say you can't, won't, shouldn't, or couldn't, and do have an accountability partner that tells you what you don't want to hear. And hopefully that is our sales manager, and hopefully we respect that sales manager enough to listen to that counsel. But I guess my question to you, though, is, Mike, what are some strategies for an individual to overcome this self-limiting beliefs that hinder sales performance?
We tend to gain confidence by having a success. So it may be just taking something very small and saying, okay, I don't like Salesforce. I don't want to deal with that. Okay, I'm going to learn one little thing to get better at that. It may be that I have trouble making a phone call to call a certain kind of a customer. Well, it's making a success one little bite-sized piece at a time can build that confidence. Most people are not going to turn over a new leaf just overnight. But if we can do bits and pieces, it makes a big difference. We're working with, back to what you're saying earlier about having a good product. We work with a lot of companies where the people think they're great salespeople, but really is that they've got a great name of a company and a great product behind them. And all of a sudden, when a competitor comes out where there's a problem, they're not so good as salespeople. They're wondering, why am I not hitting quota? So we've got to figure out, how do we make things happen regardless? And that mindset is the place to start. We worked with a guy one time. He was a former school teacher. He needed to make more money, put his kids through college. And so he got into sales. He's selling life insurance and financial products. And he's failing miserably because he saw himself as a bother. I'm just a problem. Every time I call, I'm interrupting them. I'm embarrassed I'm doing this job. So his manager sat down and helped him see the value he was creating for his customers, how he's helping them put their kids through college or help them in tragic situations. And he shifted his whole mindset. And within 30 to 60 days, he was making 3 or 4 times the number of calls he was before. So it's that bit by bit, shifting what you see your job as. What's your purpose? Reconnecting with why you do the job that is really, really critically important.
I think that also means, too, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, salespeople need to understand customer impact, even if it's not their story. Example, when you first come into an organization, you likely don't have a base of customers, and you don't have a plethora of stories that you can tell that are centered around the success of a project, of a purchase, whether it be product or a service. And so how do you get that? We always talk about, as you probably have heard, sell somebody else's story, right? You're selling somebody else's story, but to sell that person's story, you have to know the story. And how do you learn that? And one of the first things that I do when I go into a new role is I'm looking at client testimonials, case studies. I'm watching those videos. I'm using the name John Smith or Mary Q from such and such, the XYZ of, and you fill in the blank title, one of the reasons why they love working with us, as if I know the person, but I don't know them, right? And I think that's a big disconnect when we do onboarding training for new reps. They go in, they're there for a week, maybe two, for product onboarding. But shouldn't we be spending as internal sales training, that we should be spending that first week talking about the benefits, the outcomes, the customers who were impacted, how they got impacted, so we can turn around and tell those stories out in the field?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what gets the juices flowing for the salesperson and the customer. They want to understand. They don't want to just look at numbers and details. How's it going to make my life different? Whether it's money or peace of mind or whatever it might be, how's it going to make my life different? And you tell that through stories. Like you said, they don't have to be my story. It can be someone else's story. It needs to be true, but, integrity, but it's still a true story. So tell it.
Absolutely. And I think that's a missing element for all my sales enablement leaders out there. I challenge you to think about creating your own internal selling with stories training program, right? And that's what is missing, in my opinion, is the story part. And I would also further back to one of the very first things that we talked about, Mike, you and I, a little bit ago, is most reps, if you asked them, if you lined up 100 reps from one company, line them up and said, here's a microphone, in 2 sentences or less, what business problem do you solve? You'll get 100 different answers. There's generally no consistency in the business problem that they solve that is known across a sales organization. And that is a huge mistake by most sales training, sales leadership, sales enablement, is that an individual doesn't know specifically for their buyer persona, whoever that persona is, what's the language, the love language of the buyer persona. You get what I'm saying?
Oh, that is so true. They could tell you product features and benefits, but they can't tell you, how does it make this life or this business different? How am I creating a positive change, positive impact?
100%. And it's interesting when you do that exercise, everybody stand up in the room. What do you pick 10 people out of 100. Here's a microphone. Here's a microphone. Here's a microphone. It's very enlightening to a sales leader that says, oh my gosh, my people cannot articulate the business problem that we solved. Here's the question, sales leader. Can you? Can you? And I think that goes back to your coaching, which now, as I want to transition to this question, is, the role of the sales leader today. What should they be focusing more on that they may not be already right now?
Well, first of all, a lot of managers shouldn't be managers. They're simply promoted because they were top salespeople. Secondly, they tell too much instead of listen. They tell people, here's how I would do it. Or they jump in, they try to be a super rep and close the deal if they're with the salesperson. So the key of being a good manager, I think, is also being a good person that asks questions and listens. What is really going on with that rep as far as their skills and what's going on in their head? We had a rep one time who was just a super guy, and he was, in fact, a Olympic level wrestler back before he got into sales. And at this company, his customers loved him. They called him Coach, and they were buddies with him. He was in the friend zone with them all the time, but he wasn't willing to close. And his manager said, ask these closing questions, do this, do that, which were the correct things, but he wouldn't do them because he didn't see himself. He didn't want to see himself as that pushy salesperson, that sleazy guy that asked people to do stuff. So the manager sat down and said, okay, what are you really doing here? What's the value you're creating for these customers? And he got him to realize what the difference was if the people bought from him. And just like you're saying before, when he started selling the benefit of how it changed people's lives, he shifted his view of selling and he started asking the closing questions where he wouldn't before. So good managers know how to diagnose, put on a set of glasses that say, okay, is it a skill issue or is it a will issue? If it's a skill issue, what is it? Is it asking questions? Is it this? Is it behavior styles? What is it that they're not doing right? If it's a will issue, do they understand the purpose of why they're in the job? Do they see the value they're creating for people? What do they want money for? Do they want to prove something to somebody? We had a salesperson one time who was newly married, and his wife's parents were so embarrassed that their daughter would marry a salesperson instead of a lawyer or a doctor. And it was very clear, and he was embarrassed about that. So his motivation, the manager found out his motivation was, I'm going to prove that their daughter married a really successful guy. I'm going to be the top guy in this company. And that was so as a manager, do you know what people are motivated by? Do you know what they want to accomplish? And tie into that sense of purpose, and that'll release more achievement drive and help more success than any kind of skill you teach them.
And I would also argue that once you understand that sense of purpose, if appropriate, you should share it with your customers, because those are the types of things that help to close sales. And I'll give you an example, actually, Mike. So as you know, we just closed our pre-seed round, and now I'm focused on right now 10 enterprise customers. And for us, if you think about the sales training spectrum, Mike, we're from pre-hello to hello. And then great companies like Integrity Solutions are from that hello to the close phase, right? So we're all about the prospecting phase. So recently, I've been talking to our buyers, and I say, listen, what I'm about to say, first, I know that the seller's journey must align with the buyer's need. But let me tell you why this is important to me, because I just closed my pre-seed round, and what I need to do is get 10 new enterprise customers in order to be able to raise my next $3 million seed round. Again, two things have to have alignment. You'll have a need, I have a solution. But what I can tell you is for the next 10 enterprise customers, you're getting me solely and exclusively, because I need to make sure that every one of those 10 are super referenceable customers, because the VC is going to come in and call you up. So my key ask is can we keep this moving along if you see that you have a need? Because it would sure be a huge help for me, and the value that you get back in this is you're going to get 100% of me for the next year, because I got to make this work. And my goal is 10 customers in the next 6 months. Would you be willing to go along the journey? Tell me what you think about that before I give you the responses that I'm getting.
What I love about that is your transparency, your honesty. You're not just trying to sell them stuff because you want 10 customers. You're creating extra value for those 10 customers also. So they're saying they wouldn't buy just to help you. They've got to have a need, but they're helping you. They have a need, plus they get extra value from you. So that's really good.
Well, I appreciate that. And the response so far has been overwhelming. Absolutely. Let me see what I can do.
I don't want to be the 11th or 12th customer. I want to be one of those 10.
Exactly right. And that's exactly what one of the buyers recently said. My interest, I don't want to be one of those 10, because if I'm going to get you this whole entire time, then we're either going to have super success, or your program is completely flop. But I wouldn't think that you got here if it was a complete flop, right? And so I've been very, very transparent in terms of what my goal is. Of course, telling people that two things have to align: the buyer's need and journey to the seller's need and journey. And I think those things, you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable, right? To be able to tell a customer that this is what I'm looking for. And that will help you in terms of moving the opportunity along. And most people, Mike, what I find is that most people want to help.
Yes.
And so the three customers, we signed our first 3 enterprise customers in January, February, March. Each one of them I went back to and said, I want you to know that this final VC that came in for our pre-seed round said no to us. But then they found out I closed 3 enterprise deals in a row, 1, 2, 3, January, February, March. That no from in March that they gave me, or late February, turned into a yes on April 4th and to a close of money on May 6th. And it was because of you. And I have you to thank that helped me get there. And when they hear that, they're like, man, that is an amazing story. I didn't realize that us signing this agreement would put us into that position that helped you. they want to be part of that journey. They want that part of the story to be able to say, yeah, we help them to accelerate from here all the way to there. And I think most people want to be part of a journey, want to be part of a story.
We do, and they're actually drawn to people who are transparent, tell the truth, are open with that. Now, if there's not the need, they'll probably still walk away, but that's okay. You're going to find someone else who'll be more motivated to be a good customer for you.
Absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head. The worst that could happen is they say, I don't have a need. And then you're not going to waste your time to continue trying to work a process until a need develops. But if they say, I'd love to be part of the journey, then you may have something live there, right?
Well, you want them to have a need so you can solve the problems. You can have that success to tell the story to the next group.
Exactly right. Exactly right. This has been a great conversation, Mike. We're coming short on time here. And so just for you, how can someone get Listen to Sell? Is it on Barnes & Noble? Is it Amazon.com? Where can people go to be able to get the book?
They can get the book wherever they buy books. Amazon, like you said, Barnes & Noble. They go to listentosellbook.com. Gives them some free pages. They can do a preview of it. They can check out us on integritysolutions.com and learn about our sales training, coaching training, and so forth. We have programs for individuals, for all types of sales teams, and there's probably about 200 pieces of free content on there, blogs and videos and all kinds of things that they're welcome to access at no charge.
Fantastic. And Mike, if somebody wants to connect with you, what's the easiest, best way? Is that LinkedIn, Twitter, or X? What's the best way to connect with you?
Probably LinkedIn's the best way. I'm on LinkedIn. Again, it's Mike Esterday, just like yesterday without the first Y. And just feel free to reach out. Any kind of questions, I'll be glad to respond and help in any way that we can.
Now, all of you Modern Selling Podcast listeners, please make sure you know my rule. Do not reach out to Mike and hit the connect button on LinkedIn. Send him a personalized connection request that says, Mike, I heard you on the Modern Selling Podcast. Great podcast. Let's connect. So make sure make sure he knows where you heard him from and send that personalized connection request. Mike, I have one last question for you, and that is your all-time favorite movie. What is it?
I'd say the Shawshank Redemption, that movie, the kind of focus that he had of getting out of a bad situation, regardless of how long it took. That's one I can watch just over and over again.
There you go. Shawshank Redemption it is again. I think that's number 100 times out of 275 episodes. That movie has impacted a lot of people. I love it. Thank you very much, Mike, for joining us. Hey, all of you listening in right now, don't turn that dial quite yet. Listen to this message right now. Thanks for listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Please do me a huge favor and give the Modern Selling Podcast a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Oh, and don't forget, if you'd like to save 20 hours or more in a month and increase your productivity, go right now and download Fly Message, that's flymsg.io, for free. It's your free text expander and personal writing assistant. Hey, thanks for listening in, and until the next episode, good selling.